Howdy, how's everybody? Besides cold. Okay. Thank you so much for letting me come and play with you guys today. I love Brandon for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is he didn't really tell you how old I am, which is great, because I'm old. But I also love Brandon because Brandon is super engaged in making sure that you guys get the best that they have to offer, and I love that. Lots of great opportunities. My slides are really dense because I'm a data girl. So don't feel like you have to take notes. Don't feel like you have to, get it all. I'm happy to give you a copy of my presentation when I get back to DC tomorrow. Happy to share my talking points as well as my slides. Lots of data coming at you really fast, but I think that according to Brandon, he felt like you guys needed to kind of have a baseline for why international tourism is important and really why you should care. So that's my job today. So before we see where visitor volume is heading, I'm going to take this off because it's going to drive me crazy. Aren't these the coolest badges? Like, they don't stick in your clothes, they don't make a hole in your shirt. Really cool. Okay, so before we see where we are going, let's see where we have been. So here are the ranking and volumes for our top 21 countries as it stood at the end of 2018. The countries are sorted in descending order by the 18 volume. If you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, you've got green text, which means there was a volume increase from 2018 over 2017. Red means a decline. And the black numbers that are little teeny tiny numbers at the ends of the country names are where countries have shifted in ranking upward or downward. So you see a +1, -1. That's because one of the, like Brazil jumped over Germany in 2018 over 2017. From this slide, you can see clearly that Canada and Mexico really still dominate our overall numbers. We had thought that Mexico might actually surpass Canada in 2016 as we were getting to the end of 2016, but a reversal in trends for both Canada and Mexico in 2017 and then continued trends in 2018 enabled Canada to hold on to that #1 market position by quite a comfortable margin. You can also see here several ranking changes, as I said, and you can see that performances for 2018 really were mixed. Here we have volume performance in 18 over 17 based on our percent change. Again, red on the bad side, green on the good side. Fortunately for us, greens outnumber the reds about 15-6. And in this ranking, Brazil, Colombia, and Ireland had our highest growth rates for 18. We had NTTO had expected good growth from those markets, but those three really exceeded our expectations. Interestingly, China and South Korea had our largest rates of decline, and we really had not forecasted either of those things happening. Slide 3 was percent change, and here's the more important impact for you, which is volume change. This perspective allows us to better see which countries contributed to the overall volume growth and which ones were drags on that growth. Canada and Mexico's large volume base, coupled with similar modest growth, easily produced the largest and second largest growth for the year, respectively. For all the other top origin countries, our volume changes were small individually, but often represented reversals in performance versus 2017. And collectively, these all added up to about 500,000 additional visitors versus our 2017 numbers. Finally, for volume, here is where we stand for 2019 year-to-date versus the same period in 2018 with a couple of caveats. Our overseas totals and our overseas countries are January through August. Canada and total international visitation is January through July, and Mexico is just January through June. But you can see that total international volume is down about 2.3% year-to-date, which reflects a combination of 1.2% increase in total overseas visitors, coupled with a 4.8% decrease for Canada and a 7.4% decrease for Mexico. Year-to-date performances are clearly mixed across our top 21 markets, including those big declines for Canada and Mexico, but they have been slightly buoyed by higher than expected gains from the UK and Japan. Let's take a similar look at visitor spending. Here are the ranking and spending levels which is total travel exports for each of our top 21 markets for 18. Travel exports include spending in the United States as well as spending on U.S. company carriers like Delta to travel to the U.S. And as the same with volume, they're based on country of residency. Total travel exports here include all travel spending by all travelers. China became our top market a few years ago, reflecting both its large volume growth and as well our Bureau of Economic Analysis inclusion of education exports in travel from the services exports data overhaul that they did in 2014. And so our team and Bureau of Export Analysis have gone back and revised data so that it's comparable all the way back to 1999. 38% of China travel exports are actually education travel exports and include the impact of 363,000 Chinese students who attend universities in the U.S. That was for school year 17 and 18, as well as unknown numbers of additional students who may be here in lower grades. Similarly, 39% of Mexico travel exports are for seasonal migrant workers, a level nearly as large as for leisure and business travelers, for which you guys are obviously competing in marketable customers. The 5 countries that are shown in gray text here, we don't have travel exports for them until the end of October, at which point Bureau of Economic Analysis may revise all of the spending data. So those are always moving targets, spending data targets. This slide shows percent change in spending by that same lineup on the previous slide. Countries with increases in spending from 2017 to 18 outnumbered those with decreases 10 to 6. And then, like I said, data remains unavailable for the guys in gray. Here's your actual change in spending from 2017 to 2018, where India, Canada, Brazil, the UK, and Mexico increases accounted for the bulk of the overall $4.6 billion increase in spending that we got from international travelers in 2018. These data will actually be revised again later this month by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. So if you put volume and spending together, we see the trend is the same in direction, basically, going back to 1999, the start of when BEA revised that data. The differences in scale make it look like they shuffle along at the same pace, at the same rate, but they really don't. It's just the difference in the way the slides are built. In case you might be wondering how the U.S. stacks up against other countries, here are destination rankings and metrics based on data that is collected by the UN World Tourism Organization and provided by each of these individual countries. The most recent data we have for this slide is for 2018, and travel receipts exclude passenger fare exports, which isn't collected by UNWTO, because many countries have nationalized airlines for which airline metrics are less useful or they're not even available. Keep in mind that the countries do count visitors differently, so direct comparison between countries is really kind of full of challenges. For example, the USA counts students as visitors, India does not. India counts foreign nationals who reside abroad as visitors when they visit home, the US does not. So there are some challenges in looking at this as a side-by-side, but as an overall picture, it does fine. The U.S., as you can see, is the top country for travel exports, which excludes those passenger fares that I mentioned, and our exports are actually 3 times larger than the number 2 country, which is obviously Spain, as you see here. However, on the flip side of that, we only rank 3rd in terms of visitation, international visitation, and we dropped to number 3 in 2017. So now we're running here behind Spain and France. If we added passenger fares to the spending, the U.S. airline industry by itself would be ranked 7th as a country. So that's pretty impressive number. So here's some trends we watch. We'll get to the forecast here in a sec. From the UNWTO in Madrid, global inbound travel volume growth continues, more or less on their schedule of declining growth rates throughout to the year 2030. This is based on each country's reporting its inbound volume to UNWTO. 2016 numbers were up for the world in terms of travel, 3.6%, up in 2017, 7%, and up 5.6% in 18. UNWTO expects growth of 3 to 4% through their long-term forecast, which will end in 2030. Outbound volumes by country are reported with a 2-year lag, but 2018 year-to-date outbound spending in each country is in each country's own currency, which makes it removes the currency rate fluctuations, and that is up for all of the U.S.'s top origin markets. U.S. arrivals were up 0.7% in 17 and up 3.5% in 18. Unlike consistent growth across our top markets just a few years ago, performance is now really mixed in direction and quite uneven in magnitude. 19 year-to-date performances are similarly uneven. However, countries with declines year-to-date do outnumber those with increases. Our airlines remain optimistic overall about seat capacity to the U.S. To start 2020, but not overly so. And again, you probably hear much more from Brad about that. The outlook is mixed and uneven across our top markets. Strong growth in the U.S. outbound, shifting of direct flights to indirect flights and vice versa. Transit through the U.S. to Canada, key hubs and key ports of departure such as Heathrow, Frankfurt, and Toronto make this data source a little less useful for the guys at the office when they're working on their tourism forecast, which is coming up here. The Department of Homeland Security's Advanced Passenger Information System program is a citizenship-based census program that counts all persons entering the U.S., regardless of residence or purpose of travel. The non-U.S. citizen count has shown consistently solid growth up through 2018, but is less so so far in 2019. ESTA applications are a requirement for most citizens of visa waiver countries planning to visit the U.S. As such, they provide potentially useful leading indicator of travel to the U.S. All of those metrics this year have reflected a low growth and flatness. Approved applications and corresponding fee collections are up slightly in 2019 year-to-date through June. The $152 million 12-month moving sum of promotion collections has been flat over the last 12 months. Brand USA's maximum annual match of $100 million from U.S. government from this fund, per the Travel Promotion Act, is secure from a funding source perspective based on the past and current ESTA fee collection trends. That 12-month moving sum of collections, again, $152 million or $52 million higher than what Brand USA is allowed to match on any 1 year. What that means for us is that funding level should be able to be maintained for some time, even if the inbound volumes from the visa waiver countries experience protracted declines. However, I think it should also be noted that Brand USA's matching funding is only legislatively intact through the end of fiscal 20, which would be September 30, 2020. U.S. Travel Association and others are currently working with members of Congress to try to get that funding secured beyond the current sunsetting date. If you have any influence in Congress or on the Hill in Washington and you care about Brand USA, you might want to reach out to your elected officials and tell them it's an important program. The International Monetary Fund releases a semi-annual country-level forecast of numerous economic and demographic variables. Their April 19 release reported little change from their October 2018 release, and they expect that when the 19 release is updated and is out, it'll be similar, except that perhaps Argentina and Venezuela, who have continuing fiscal challenges, will show large shifts in their numbers. For 2018, the U.S. Department of State visa issuance rate was again down by 9% and is now down 21% since its peak of 2015. Visa issuance is a leading indicator of future travel, but it's not a great one because visas for all or most visa-requiring countries are valid for 10 years to most visa classes. So visa issuance and travel volumes aren't really as correlated as you might expect. So let's look at our office's international travel forecast. The forecast is prepared by our research staff, and they use a ton of variables: economic, demographic, social factors, historic visitation trends, lots of other stuff that I know nothing about. And the forecast was just updated this month and was just released. This next slide is going to like make your eyes cross, so there's a copy of it on your chairs. It looks like that. There's lots of really good information on this slide, and along with the fast fact sheet that I've given you, really gives you a quick overview of the importance of international travel to the U.S. and to the U.S. economy, more importantly. These documents can also be downloaded from our website and easily shared amongst other people that you think might be interested. So let me walk you through this, and then we'll focus on the actual findings. Moving more or less from left to right across the paper that you've got in your hand in this crazy slide, the office team prepares change metrics for each of our top 21 origin markets for the year of the forecast. So we forecast the top 21 because the number 20 and number 21 countries bop back and forth between being the 20th or 21st. So we just put them both on there because they swap places so regularly. Those 21 countries account for 87% of the international inbound travel to the US. So they're really the ones that we watch super closely. Estimates for all the other countries, and I think we go down now to about 45 or 50 countries in total, which are not on this slide but are available on the website, are done using a simple trend function. They don't try to get down to the same level of using all those pieces and parts I mentioned earlier for all of the countries for which they do volume estimates. And these are sorted here on the paper that you've got and on the slide by their 2018 ranking. The new forecast is for 19 to 24, as you see on your paper. 19 is still a forecast year because we had data only through August that the team could use to produce this year's update. 2024 is the end date because we rely on the International Monetary Fund for country-level data. It's just as simple as that. And their most recent forecast goes through 2024. Useful change metrics on the right of your slide include actual change volume for 24 versus 2018, the corresponding overall change rate, and the compounded annual growth rates. And you'll see just a couple of countries on your slide that are we're looking to have negative rates over the course of this forecast period, but not too many and not too bad. So what do we have? First, we believe that 2019 is expected to end down in total by about 1% by the time we have the full year's worth of data, which will be in February of 20. Secondly, we think growth rates for 20 through 24 will be positive, between 2% and 3.2%. Thus are near but are on the low end of what UNWTO had forecast. Third, all countries are expected to continue to grow or to resume a growth mode for each year of the forecast except for Argentina, Sweden, and Venezuela. Growth rates are going to be led by India, and shouldn't be any surprise. Brandon and his colleagues were telling me earlier they just came back from a sales mission to India, which went really well, so that's a good thing for you guys here. India will be plus 37% over the forecast period. We expect France to be up by 25%, Taiwan and Colombia both at 23%, China, Brazil, and Switzerland expected to grow by 18%. The compound annual growth rate are correspondingly going to be obviously the highest as well. 5 countries are expected to account for 58% of our total growth through 2024. That would be Canada, Mexico, the UK, China, and India. Here's a cumulative picture of all of that data. Isn't this so much easier to read? It's like, oh, that's what you were saying. Actual volume here, 2,000 through 2018 is in blue, and our forecast through 2024 is in orange. I'm going to skip this slide because I don't like it. Brandon can tell you all about that later. So, what about you guys? We've been looking at the big picture at the national level, so let's narrow our focus down to exactly why it is that we think international travel is important for Atlanta. For the top markets and for international visitor volume, I'll be comparing the visitors to the Atlanta Metropolitan Statistical Area over a 3-year period because it gives us a better view, basically, of international visitors to your neck of the woods. The source of our data for you specifically is our office's ongoing monthly survey, our survey of international air travelers, which is based on surveys of travelers at international departure gates as travelers are leaving the US. So we're catching people as they're just getting ready to go home. How much did you spend? How long did you stay? What did you do while you were here? Where did you go? How many people are in your travel party? How long in advance did you plan your travel, et cetera? And this includes being able to get this data from travelers who are departing from your very own Atlanta-Jackson Hartsfield International. This graph shows overseas plus Mexico air visitor volume to the Atlanta area over the past 2 decades. The trend mostly mirrors that of the US, generally upward trending with a few reversals here and there, which was the same for the US, especially in that 9/11 SARS era decline in the early aughts. Mexico air travelers segment was added to our survey in 2005, and this graph shows that the segment adds noticeably to the Atlanta visitor count. At Mexico, land volume is not available, as it isn't available for anybody, which is a whole different story. And our office doesn't have yet city-level visitor volume from the Canadian market, but you can see here that the Canada visitor volume to Georgia is sizable, profoundly larger than any of your other source markets, as a matter of fact. This graph shows the trend for Atlanta's share of overseas visitor plus Mexico air visitor volume and a comparison of shares for several of our key traveler markets. Without knowing the past and current international marketing strategy that you guys are in, I can't say whether any of these numbers is good or bad. It's just, for me, they are what they are. For you, though, we see it as a starting point to evaluate or maybe reevaluate your pockets of opportunity. Good marketing is all about details. Here are some of the details for Atlanta's top international markets. This list includes both the traditional source markets of the UK and Germany and France, but it also shows your newer top markets of India, China, and South Korea. Again, the comparison to the national averages for perspective only. Positive or negative point differences are not necessarily bad or good. And again, way down at the bottom of that slide, you see Canada shown here just to remind you that it is your top market by far. Here are details for your visitors' planning sources and timing. They are similar to national averages. A higher incidence rate for the use of a corporate travel department makes sense due to the higher incidence of business travelers that Atlanta receives. Trip planning and booking times are somewhat shorter than the US averages, assuming that the vacation segment has much longer advanced planning and booking versus other segments, as they do for these segments at the national level. Here are some important characteristics again with comparisons for US averages for perspective. As with the US on the whole, your visitors are most likely to be visiting here on vacation, but incidents of business travel, conference travel, and VFR, everybody know what VFR is, visiting friends and relatives, is higher than the US average. Atlanta visitors stay longer in the US. They are mostly repeat visitors, and even more so than the US on average, are less likely to stay put in one destination, and have a lower incidence of staying in a hotel or motel, but stay slightly longer when they do stay in a hotel or motel. Here are your top ports of entry for Atlanta visitors. Of course, no surprise that ATL is your top POE, but it's still the entry point for only half of your visitors. We saw in the previous slide that the Atlanta visitors have a higher incidence rate of visiting more than one destination compared to the US average. This slide continues that message of the relatively higher interconnectivity of Atlanta with other US destinations. And the consistency in that message continues here with transportation modes. Atlanta visitors are most likely to use air travel between cities and are more likely to do so than compared with all other overseas visitors to the US. We just saw ports of entry where your visitors come from while they're entering the US, but here's where they go, either before or after they are here visiting you in Atlanta. The list is a mix between other distant states having key entry points as well as neighboring states. Here's the next tier of shared destinations, and are they competitors or are they partners to you? A lot of that depends on you in this room. Finally, here's their first tier of activity participation while your visitors are here in the US. Activity participation is collected only at the national level, but whether experiencing these things in Atlanta or elsewhere, it gives you great detail on what they do somewhere while they're here. From a few slides back, we know that half of your visitors visited only one state, Georgia. We also know there's a very small percentage of overseas visitors to Georgia who said they visited somewhere other than Atlanta. For purposes of this slide, then, we can say that most of the activities outlined here in which your visitors said they participated obviously happen in or around Atlanta. Here's the rest of that remaining set of activities. These are all questions that are asked on our survey of international air travelers. When I look at slides like these last several that I've shown you, all I really see for you guys in this room is the possibility for partnerships, cooperative marketing, promotional activities across your various companies and interests. A third of Atlanta visitors, for instance, rent cars while they're here. And Atlanta visitors have a higher than national average incidence of those visitors touring the countryside, visiting historic locations, and seeing cultural and ethnic heritage sites. So of those of you that are on this, the activities slide side of the house, are you guys working with your rental car companies to make sure that the folks who rent their cars are getting materials that are from you, making referrals to your locations, et cetera? Have you banded together to do advertising and marketing, either through the CVB or through the State Tourism Office, through Travel South, through Brand USA, or simply with partners that you've packaged up on your own to your key markets? And are you getting the most bang for everybody's buck by doing that cooperative work? Domestically, perhaps it's not as easy to work together because maybe you'd be at odds with those folks with whom you compete here at home. But when you think internationally, it's a whole different ballgame. Oh, pardon the reference to ball games. Sorry, guys. Not. That was mean, wasn't it? I didn't mean to be mean. I'm so excited about my nationals, so I can't stand it. Folks from your key international markets really honestly don't give a hoot when they cross city boundaries, county boundaries, even state lines. They just don't care. If there's a compelling reason for you to move an international traveler from attraction A to historic point B to ethnic heritage site C, they're going to do that. Doesn't make any difference where they're crossed, but they're not going to do any of it if somebody doesn't draw them that roadmap to get them to make the go decision to do that. I call it co-opetition. You can call it whatever you will, but internationally, it's really the only thing that makes any sense. So that's a view of international travel from our office perspectives. Here are some of the key takeaways from that perspective. Global travel continues to be a global growth industry. Growth in 2019 may be lower, but it's lower from a higher than originally forecasted level, so that's a good thing. Plus, its lower growth rate is also on an expanding base of travelers because we keep adding. U.S. volume has increased in 18 to a new level, but is down 19 year to date, as I said. Both years, country performances are uneven and without any clear patterns, such as all of Latin America is down or all of Asia is up. NTTO's forecast does expect a decline for 19, but return to growth and volume records for 2020 through 2024. 5 of those countries are expected to account for more than half of the growth over the forecast period, as you see here. And as all of this relates specifically to Atlanta, your hot origin markets are Germany and India, but Canada will likely remain your #1 market, despite our not being able to provide you with good city level data about that. You've got marketing and promotion activities and opportunities in the fact that more than half of Atlanta's overseas visitors don't arrive in Atlanta from Hartsfield-Jackson, and the fact that your visitors have a higher incidence of traveling to other places either before or after they've visited you. In my mind, all of these data points to the incredible opportunities that exist in the marketplace for that strong co-opetition between you. So I say, get busy. Introduce yourselves to somebody in this room that you don't know. See if you can broker some new partnerships. See if there's not a way to get out there and beat the drums for Atlanta. Because I can guarantee you that somebody in some other destination right around the corner is going to beat the drums for their destination as hard as they can. And while I'm on that note, I would just say that I'm of the understanding that you guys are sort of some new in the market, international markets, some a little more seasoned, et cetera. One, help each other, because I think that's really critically important. But think about when you are looking at, do I want to be in the international arena, recognize that it's not just, I'm going to go to the international market, I'm going to go to trade shows, or I'm going to go to sales missions. You got to be ready at home. You got to be able to say, I've got language capacity, I have marketing materials in language, I've got Q&A or facts on my website in the languages of the markets that you want to engage. Sometimes it's as simple, if you're a hotelier, do a poll of your staff to see what other languages they speak. I can guarantee you they're not all English language speakers, or they've got at least 2 languages in their arsenal. So if somebody comes to the front desk and is trying to check in and they don't speak the language of the front desk clerk would have the opportunity to look in the language bank and find that staff person who speaks that language and have them come to the front desk to help with the check-in process. Do you have some menus printed in other languages? Do you have some of your what do you call those? The little plaques on the sides of the art and the artifacts. Do you have a brochure even, or a one-page or two-page printout that explains in a different language what people are seeing as they're going through your museum or through your attraction? So there's little things, little itty-bitty steps you can take that will get you closer to the international arena, not without you necessarily having to spend a whole lot of money to get there. So as you're thinking about what you can do with the Atlanta Bureau, what you can do with your other bigger partners in the area, make sure that you're ready you're ready to have those Chinese visitors or those visitors from France or Poland or wherever it is. You really are ready to do that Southern hospitality thing, but to do it in their language. Just a quick note about Poland. On 11/11, they will be the 39th country accepted into the visa waiver program. And that's been a really long time coming. But you can't tell anybody that because it won't be announced till the 11th of November. So shh. Here's how you find me. Thank you so much for letting me come and share with you this afternoon.